UFC 305 went down yesterday in Perth, Australia. And here I'm going to be recapping the card and I'm going to be giving my reaction to every single fight on the card. While we're going through each fight, I'll talk about my picks. I'll talk about how we did in the end. We'll see how I did overall on the card. First fight of the night was Stewart Nicoll and Jesus Aguilar. And, I think that my take was pretty good. It's just, Jesus Aguilar has a nasty guillotine. I did think this to myself because in the preps that I was doing for the fights, when I was rewatching a few of Jesus's fights, I watched his fight that he lost via submission to Tatsuro Taira. And, right off the bat, Tatsuro shoots in on a single and Jesus, I'm just going to stop calling him Jesus. He pulls guillotine from half guard and Tatsuro ultimately got out of it, right, passed, ended up getting a mounted triangle, which he transitioned into an arm bar. But there was a moment where, Jesus has it locked up even in his half guard and is torquing enough to where, Tatsuro he looked like he was a little bit worried. He ultimately got through it, but that was something that I considered that, we've seen this guy and my take was that, he's too willing to go for a submission. It's a very high risk, high reward strategy, but it worked out here for him very well. Nicoll gets the back, is landing, he gets the back and he gets him flattened out and is landing devastating ground and pound. And then just slides off the back and in a transition to try to get back into a double leg, Jesus just jumps the gilly. And unlike Dustin Poirier, gets the guillotine finish and completely chokes Stewart Nicoll out cold, and then immediately gets up and is picking his feet up like he's his sparring partner in the gym. Not a good look for Nicoll, especially making his debut in Australia, but great win for our Lord and Savior. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have Kenan versus Rick Glenn. Is he Ricky Glenn or is he Rick Glenn? I don't know at this point. I'm not sure if it's going to matter because we might not be seeing this guy in the UFC anymore. I was right on this one. So, there were maybe a few moments where Kenan could have, put his foot on the gas and gotten a finish. I said that I thought he was going to get a knockout. But it looked as though Song was consciously making a decision you're winning this fight, see it through the end, don't get overzealous and get slept, which, I can't knock him for, especially coming off of a loss to Jusei. But he gets it done very decisively. Tough for Rick, but we got the pick right. So moving on to the next fight, it was Tom Nolan and Alex Reyes. And we get the pick right, but it's and he wins a unanimous decision, but Tom Nolan looked less than impressive. Sure, he landed some nice elbows and some big knees, but we've seen Alex Reyes fold to who we thought was lesser competition. So, is Tom Nolan, a tricky guy being a 6'3", slender man, Jalen Turner maxing frame for lightweight? I would say yes, but I think that he's really going to struggle against somebody who, isn't Alex Reyes. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think that I could see Tom Nolan beating Guram. I don't think that I could see him beating Elvis Brenner. There's a lot of guys I think that he's going to struggle with. If he came out here and he slept Alex Reyes in the first round, I would have maybe still been buying into the hype, but we got a larger sample size of his fight. And there were too many instances where he was also getting clipped. He's not the most defensively responsible guy. He just he uses his elbows and his knees well, but he just, I don't know, he's there too much to be hit, right? The total strike count was relatively close. And Alex Reyes was the one who was getting a few takedowns and, got the back a few times. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. A very underwhelming win by Tom Nolan. But again, we get that one. That's not oh my gosh, Chase, what a hot take. You took Tom Nolan to win that fight. but he did so in a very unimpressive manner. So moving on, we have Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns, which, Jack Jenkins also a big favorite. He won far more convincingly than Tom Nolan did, but he got taken down a few times. It's Herbert Burns, man. We've seen this guy give up and quit so many times. And it's like, yes, Jack Jenkins did ultimately get the finish. He looked very crispy on the feet. He mixes it up so well to all three levels. He was really giving Herbert trouble to the body. I don't know if that's something that he saw. Personally, when I watch a Herbert Burns fight, I just think to myself, if you can avoid getting your back taken, or you can avoid, getting mounted, from side, I think Herbert had Jack in side control at one point, and then literally just laid there and let the clock run out. So I think that Jack Jenkins is a solid featherweight, but seeing him get taken down by Herbert Burns that easily when Herbert was fresh kind of makes me think that some of these guys in featherweight gets really grappler heavy toward the top. I'm not sure if Jack Jenkins, I don't know what his ceiling is at this point, but if that's something that he could work on, obviously he's shown a lot of promise on the feet, but it's you're getting taken down fairly easily by Herbert Burns. Not really a sprawl in the few, easy takedowns that he got. In the end, he ended up getting, just the two, and they were pretty easy. So we had Jack Jenkins, right? And good win for him, but don't skip the wrestling class. Don't skip the BJJ classes. That's something that he obviously needs to work on. Otherwise, I think that we might see him get fraud checked later on. All right, so moving on to the next fight. Casey O'Neill versus Luana Santos. I was wrong here, and I can't even try to cope and find Casey O'Neill dominated. I think that I don't know. This is a very different Casey O'Neill than we saw in her last fight, where, again, like I said in my prediction video, she looked clueless on the feet. Here, Luana Santos, you can't really call this a short notice fight because she had a month, but it was just sort of a strange approach. I don't know if she was hurt, or I don't know. Maybe she just got buzzed by a shot early, but she really was just on the back foot when she, at best, has shown that she's a somewhat competent striker, but she's going to use her striking and her pressure to set up her takedowns. And she did score a takedown, but it was a lot of failed head and arm throws. In the end, Casey O'Neill almost gets a submission in the last few seconds of the third, because she had the back, and Luana was kind of stomping her feet to keep the blood flowing, or maybe she was just trying to create space because there was short time. I don't know, but I was wrong on this one. Impressive win by Casey O'Neill. Maybe Casey O'Neill, just had a low point there after losing, her bout to Jennifer Maia, and then just had a really bad outing in her last match. But I was surprised by how little we got out of Luana Santos. She really got fraud checked, if I'm being honest, because she looked quite solid. And I thought maybe if she would lose this fight, it would have been a very close decision. So that's why I went with her, because I thought maybe in the grappling she'd have the edge. And then because Casey looked so lost in the feet, I thought Luana is okay enough to go with her. But she was trying to block Casey's punches with her face, and it really wasn't working out. So good win for Casey O'Neill. So where are we at right now? 0-1, 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 3-2. Okay, so this one hurts because I took Josh Culibao to win this, and I do have to say, I think Ricardo Ramos won. I do. I think that the sub attempt was too close in round one to be able to give the round to Josh Culibao. And then I think that round two, right, looking at this, that's where he had the sub attempt. Josh outstruck him, but it's if we're looking at the criteria of the unified rules of mixed martial arts, we're looking at damage, and submissions only really get brought in when there's a near fight finishing sequence. And I do have to admit, it was that deep, right? So I think that Culibao, loses the first. And then, dude, he puts a fucking clinic on Ricardo Ramos in the second round. Is just beating the hell out of him. Gets a knockdown. And, I think that the reason why they ultimately gave the round to Ricardo Ramos in the third was because in the sequence where he was going to get his takedown, he landed like a short elbow on Josh Culibao. And if there's visible damage on the fighter, even if that fighter landed more strikes, they're going to probably lean in the direction of the fighter who caused visible damage. When you also factor in that, he had a sub attempt, or wait, I guess that was just only in the first. Well, anyway, he finishes on his back. And I don't know, it was close. I mean, there might be a set of judges out there. Obviously, it was a split decision. There might be a set of judges out there that give it to Josh Culibao. I'm not going to sit here and cope. I do think that Ricardo Ramos won, but I'm just fucking annoyed because I picked Josh Culibao not thinking that, like, the only reason why I can think he fought the way he did in the third round is because he thought he was up 2-0. Like, he wasn't really freaking out trying to get Ramos off his back. And also, it's like, dude, if you know you're winning the fight, it's not that hard to prevent you're obviously winning the third round on the feet. So why are you getting in so close that Ramos is going to be able to get a takedown when it's so clear that that's his only path to victory? It's just the fight IQ of Josh Culibao. He just gave it away. He was emoting on Ricardo Ramos doing his 360 spin to mock him in the second round. And he loses, and he's acting salty about it, but I really think that he has no one to blame but himself. I'm going to consider this going forward. I have mental tiers of guys in my head that fall into these different buckets. Josh Culibao has now been chucked into the bucket of low IQ fighters. Anik was talking on the commentary about how he can open up his throat and he can slam down a beer in 1.6 seconds. Bro needs to do less of that and more of just being present enough in a fight to understand that it's 1-1. You're 2.5 minutes into the third and you're schooling him again. Why don't you just stay at distance, circle, use your outside attacks, and Ramos would be forced to charge in where you could counter him. You just decide, instead of being the matador, to be the bull for no reason and then give up the back control while simultaneously allowing yourself to get cut. Josh Culibao is a dumbass, and I feel dumb for picking him. But yeah, so that brings me to 3-3. Oh my gosh, guys. Okay, so Valter Walker, right, gets a very impressive submission, but this was a really weird one. This was an incredibly weird one. So Junior Tafa is looking on the feet, kind of doing his thing, waiting, trying to land a big shot, not really pouring on volume, but it's feeling like Junior Tafa's finding his distance. And then bam, he lands a big shot on Valter, which doesn't knock him down, but it wobbles him. In which case, it turns into a grappling exchange because Valter, like so many of these heavyweights, like Carl Williams, who I just can't for the life of me. If I was their coach, I'd I would probably lose my shit because I'd be like, dude, you're the wrestler. Don't wait until you're rocked to wrestle. And it's funny because that is why I picked against Valter Walker. That is why I went with Junior Tafa. But it works out for him, right? Somehow, because while he's buzzed, he is able to collect himself, get a takedown, get the back of Junior Tafa. And Junior is vintage Tafa family, him and his brother. Just sit there and kind of watch the clock go down. And Valter, in a very impressive, the weekend of CJI, it's like the spirit of Craig Jones somehow. I mean, I'm saying that like Craig Jones is deceased or something. It's like in true Craig Jones fashion, pulls heel hook and gets a verbal tap because Junior Tafa goes, as his ACL or MCL is getting torn. And then he's protesting and he slaps Valter Walker in the face. Have fun getting ACL or MCL surgery, you NPC heavyweight fighter who, why don't you, like, have you guys, it's like the same thing as Tuivasa. At a certain point, you should just learn fundamental get-ups and like basic jiu-jitsu defense so that when Valter is pulling heel hook with 10 seconds left, he isn't in a position that he's tearing your ACL or MCL over the span of like 6 seconds. There were 4 seconds left on the clock, dude. Like, learn. You hardly ever see, like, when you see a jiu-jitsu guy dropping and pulling footlocks and heel hooks and shit, you know that things are going very poorly for them. And they're just like trying a desperation submission. And yet Valter Walker gets the verbal technical submission on Junior Tafa. So yeah, Junior Tafa, just send him back. Why doesn't bro just kickbox? He doesn't understand anything about grappling. It's like I was right because I said that my pick, the reasoning is because Valter Walker will wait until he gets buzzed to shoot a takedown. And it still worked out for him because Junior is so bad at jiu-jitsu. Maybe that's the difference between him and Denise that I should have considered. But anyway, Junior Tafa, terrible. 3-4 now. Okay, so I did good on the main card at least. So, at least we're going to, get into a better standing here toward the end. We have Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. So Carlos Prates, what can I say, man? He's got Muay Thai tatted on his chest, and he just put on a beating on Li Jingliang that we've never seen over his entire career. We did see him get picked up and like little broed by Hamzat. He brought him over to Dana White like a trophy and then proceeded to choke him out. But then we saw the Leech like have a little bit of success against high-level talent. But dude, Carlos Prates, first of all, I was sitting there thinking to myself when Carlos had rocked him for like the third time in a row and Lee is just standing there with his hands down in like a Mortal Kombat get finished state. Not sure why the ref didn't step in and say, defend yourself, and then call a standing TKO. Like, I know the UFC loves to get their viral moments. We didn't really need to see the Leech completely knocked out cold, but amazing win. I had this pick for Carlos Prates. I thought maybe it'd be like a decision, or I can't even remember. I can't remember if I said late stoppage, but I do remember saying I thought it could go longer. But dude, I mean, he just was landing bombs on Li Jingliang. And Li Jingliang wasn't like trying to clinch or grapple. So he was just there to get teed off on. I'm a Leech fan, so it was kind of hard to watch. But great win for Carlos Prates. Okay, moving on. I got this one right too. Tai Tuivasa versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Literally insane that a judge gave it to Tai 30-27. At least they sent bro home. They literally said, no, go on. We don't need you anymore. Because that is the craziest. Like, look at these stats. 19-9, 37-13, 36-15. I know that sometimes you're watching a fight and it's like, it's pitter patter and then one guy lands a bomb and like rocks him. Trust me, it wasn't that. Like, Jairzinho was landing the better strikes. Tai Tuivasa, I was spot on this one, right? I said Tai Tuivasa is one of these guys who's just like, I'm here to give you a fun fight. And his excuse is always that he's not in good enough shape. The UFC will probably let this guy, go on a 0-8 run like Tony Ferguson because he's a fan favorite and the people want to see him regardless. Maybe the UFC will try to give him somebody who he can actually beat. Like, they have been feeding him like the best guys, on this like massive L streak that he's on. But yeah, it's just tough, man. It's just tough. So this is 5 L's in a row. And but talking about Jairzinho, like, he looked good. He did what he does. He pumps the jab. He mixes it up. He's throwing kicks, body shots. He's got good, like, he's just a good fighter. Like, you have to be one of these top tier grapplers or like one of these specimen athletes to beat Jairzinho, I think. And, I think that at this point, they should probably do Jairzinho Pavlovich because, like, Pavlovich is obviously, coming off of a few L's and Jairzinho is on the up and up. And, like, maybe that's someone that Jairzinho could do okay against. I know that we all know that Sergey is the nuclear option, but Jairzinho is showing that, if you're going to be a striker to take him out, you do have to still be at that elite tier. And I know that Pavlovich was there, but maybe he's slipping. So, I'm just doing the UFC's job for him. You're welcome. You can hire me as a matchmaker if you want. I'd quit my job. Anyway, moving on to the next fight, we have Mateusz Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. And look, guys, I'm really proud on this one because I totally called this one. I said that I thought Dan Hooker was going to win because of damage-based scoring. I really didn't think that Gamrot was going to be so willing to play into like that kind of exciting game. But in the first round, right, it's looking good. Gamrot drops him. Well, it's looking good for Gamrot. He drops him. He's literally in like a postured guard, landing big shots. And Dan did almost finish him, but I still would have given the first to Gamrot because I think he just did too much damage throughout. And then in the second round, Dan Hooker, right, I'd say that it was a clear win because if you're looking at the strikes, I know that like Dan was landing the more significant strikes. And then in the third round, Dan landed the more significant strikes and it was close. The third round was close. I will say that. And it was a split decision, but the last criteria is aggressiveness. And Dan was walking Gamrot down. So even if Gamrot landed the same amount on the back foot, like you also had Dan, threatening guillotines while Gamrot's shooting in. So it's like, I don't think anyone's calling robbery here. I think that this was not like the most decisive decision, but I personally think Dan won, and that was our pick. And I had a bet on him to win by decision, which was my best of the night. So I was really fucking pumped about that. But this is huge for Dan Hooker going forward. I mean, who do we match this guy up with now? It's got to be probably Charles Oliveira or Justin Gaethje. But, this career resurgence is incredible. I do feel bad for Gamrot because he gave us a good fight. But, yeah, dude, I mean, Dan won. What can you say? That's what it comes down to, and I'm really happy that Dan didn't get, again, it wouldn't have been robbed, but I would have been salty if it was a split decision and they gave it to Gamrot. Oh, man, moving on, dude. Kai Kara-France slept bedtime MMA. So, like, down goes Lucas Tracy, down goes bedtime MMA. We literally, and MMA Guru is, like, on death's door, sickness-wise. You guys might be left with me. I don't know. The three giants are going down. No, I'm just playing. But, so, I think Steve Erceg was looking good, right? Kai just sort of added one more shot to the combo and just cracked Steve. And it's like, I got this one wrong. I had Steve here because I thought Steve was going to be responsible enough with his hands to not get clipped. But what can I say? I mean, I was wrong. Like Kai, first of all, we did see him get hit a few times early on, which kind of made you like, in my head, as I'm watching it, I'm seeing Steve landing some shots, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this is going according to plan, because Kai kind of looked like he was feeling those early shots. And then, bam, Kai lands left-handed overhand from hell. So, like, front side, near side overhand. And I thought it was a good stoppage. Like, he chased Steve down, follow-up shot dropped, and the body language was that Steve was donezo. And it's a tough look for bro. He's Dominic Reyes 2.0, the flyweight division. I really, really hope we don't see him get flying knee knocked out by Manel Kopp next, because that would feel like it would be the next step in the scripted storyline of guys who almost beat the champion and then fall off a cliff. It's okay. Years from now, he'll get a W like Dominic Reyes did against Dustin Jacoby, and we'll be rallying behind him again one day. But this might be the beginning of a dark chapter for Steve Erceg fans. And moving on to a main event, which I'm very proud of that I made the right pick because, yo, bro, I was sweating at one point. So, like, Dricus du Plessis, in the first round, it's kind of like, I don't know who you give it to, man. It was like a close round. I think that, like, Dricus, first of all, the unofficial stats that they had were, like, cracked out. Because they had Izzy getting, like, 12 strikes to, like, Dricus's 7. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So Dricus outlands him, but Izzy did land a few good strikes that maybe were a little bit more significant, which is why I'm saying it was kind of even. But, like, maybe Dricus got that one, maybe Izzy. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. And then in the second round, I think that you definitely have to give it to Dricus because he had a few almost finished rear naked chokes. He was landing good strikes. He, got slightly outstruck. But when you look at, the takedowns and the, he beat, like Bilal Muhammad would say, he beat him in the striking and the wrestling and the grappling. And I think that he just, he got this round done. So it's like, it's either 2-0 DDP or it's 1-1 is like how we're all feeling. And then in round 3, it's like vintage style bender. He's digging to the body, landing like a body and then head. He's like getting through Dricus was being very responsible, keeping the guard up at all times. Obviously getting tasered in camp when you put your hands down, it works, guys. So write that down. And but Izzy was styling on him, and it really looked like one of those body shots. There was like an eye poke, and then Dricus, or maybe like Izzy was standing him back up, but there was a sequence where Dricus kind of looked like he didn't want to get back up. And, the ref's like, come on, like the fight's about to, it's going to start. You got to defend yourself. And things were looking bad for our boy Dricus in the third. And honestly, the fourth round it like started off very similarly to the third. So we're like, hold on, wait a minute. Izzy, if he styles on him here, it's either 3-1 or 2-2. But if you look at the direction it's heading in, if you're a Dricus fan, you're not feeling good about how, if this continues through the fourth, like, is Dricus going to be able to clutch up and win the fifth? Because he's looking like he's wearing these shots. And Dricus, he remembers. It's like in the middle of the firefight, he remembers. He's like, I never left. And then bam, hits him with a fucking left hook. Drops him. Izzy turns his back. He comes around and hits Izzy with a right hook while Izzy is literally not even facing him. Dricus must have concrete fists because Izzy looked really hurt. And then Izzy goes down and Dricus just jumps on the back and gets the rear naked choke, looking like Craig Jones out there versus Gabby Garcia. He switches to the Gable grip and, Izzy is just not able to fight the hands. Dude, and he gets a gritty W. And this is a huge W for his career because, you can now say that in his last 3 fights, he beat Rob, Sean, and then Izzy. And I don't care if people say the Sean fight was close. Like, it was close, but he won. It counts. It wasn't a robbery. And so it's like, the confidence is only going to grow with this man. And he did look improved, at least as far as, being more against Sean. Like, what are you really that worried about? I mean, you are going to get jabbed in the face a lot, but you're not going to get hit with these massive shots that Izzy was landing. And like at one point in the third, he landed a spinning elbow. Dricus was dipping a little bit and Israel was trying to catch him with the knee. But our boy Dricus gets it done. So overall, we go 0-1. 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, 3-4, 4-4, 5-4, 6-4, 6-5, 7-5. Not my best work, but on the main card, I went 4-1. So it was a big comeback on the main card. But yeah, this was a banger fight. I was super pumped, and I loved watching it. And man, we got the Sphere card, and then we got the Abu Dhabi pay-per-view, which is going to be insane. I can't wait to be covering those. So, look, if you guys like the content, give me a like and a subscribe. If you guys feel like you like what I'm saying, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, if you think I'm a jabroni, let me know too. But yeah, this was a really fun card, and look forward to going back to the Apex next weekend. Peace.